Howdy folks, my name's Matthew, aka EZBOT, and today we have a little treat. We have the Neuzeit Drop, which you just saw on the table. This is what I'm calling the Octatrack of MIDI controllers, at least until somebody makes another one that does a bunch of crazy stuff like this. Once you get your head wrapped around how this thing functions, there's a lot it can do, and it definitely takes you to a pretty creative space, I would say. Hang on a sec, let's make sure audio is all good. I always forget to put my microphone into my headphones and it drives me insane if I can't hear it. So I've had the Neuzeit Drop for a while. I was one of the people that they sent a unit over to, and I've gotten to play with it a few times. I've paired it with a couple of different pieces of equipment, and I gotta say, it's a beautiful unit. It really is just a gorgeous piece of hardware, really well built, and offers a ton. It's a MIDI merger. Let's take a look at it. Let's put my face over here. It's a MIDI merger. It's basically got Octatrack scenes like you would want in the Octatrack. Of course, you need to have all the stuff that the Octatrack does for that to have some value, but you can build stuff like you can build in the Octatrack with the scenes. A million buttons. I know you've seen a ton of videos on this thing already, or at least you've seen the launch videos, right? And you know how it works. You watch those videos, but maybe you haven't seen it in context of something you might actually do with this thing, because, you know, just because a piece of equipment offers you a lot doesn't mean you're going to use all of what it offers. And that's always true. That is always true. And I'm trying to eke out as much as I possibly can out of this unit. But what I've written for it right now, I think, is pretty great. And it's a pretty good demo to me of what you can do with this. And currently I'm building out project templates for different ideas with this, because I'm trying to see, like, you know, can this upgrade my existing workflow? Right now I feel really confident and very quick on my boxes. Like, I feel like I can just jump in and play the Digitact. I can jump in and play the Digatone and the Octatrack, and I can do all the things I need to do. So if I add another piece of equipment to my workflow, it needs to decrease either the amount of effort that I spend doing certain operations on my machines, or it needs to give me capabilities that I wasn't able to do before. Okay? So those are the two things I'm constantly looking for. I'm not going to add another piece of equipment because it looks cool, right? And this does look cool. So you can see, like, there's a reason to just put this on the table because it's pretty cool looking, you know, and it does a lot. But this actually does add functionality to my existing workflow, and it actually does things that my other equipment doesn't do. And so with that in mind, it actually does the thing that it's supposed to do. So this is called the Neuzeit Drop, right? And so it has these two different modes. It has a drop mode and it has a jump mode. And currently I'm in jump mode. I prefer the jump mode because the jump mode does this nice fader transition. Let me just show you exactly what I mean. So here's a scene. I'm gonna have some music play. And I'm gonna use one of these macro scenes. This is essentially exactly like something I've built in my Octatrack performance templates before. This is my go back to everything scene. Say like I screw something up and I'm messing with all sorts of weird stuff on here. I can hit this scene and it's just gonna take me back. Basically like reload your part on the Octatrack. If you go function, and you can't see this, but on the Octatrack, if you go function Q, it'll set you back up to where you were. You know, and I've been using function Q a lot while I've been programming this. So what I did first with the Neuzeit Drop, let me just talk. We're gonna talk about this in context of somebody who likes to play shows, and that's me. I love to play shows. I love to play shows with hardware, and you know, I only want to use equipment that is actually going to help me out. So I've been trying it with different things. First thing I did was I paired it with the lovely Syntact because I wanted to have an excuse to play with my Syntact. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to see what I can do. Let's take this sucker for a spin. So I made a project on here and I currently have it saved and I'm going to share it on my Patreon because it's pretty much done. It's really basic. But essentially what that project did is it broke out all the tracks because you have multiple layers. You can treat it as 2 pages if you want. But you have multiple layers. And so I had all the faders equal the track volumes. These were temporary mutes, which is what I have these programmed as here. I'm going to get into what I've done here because this is for my new performance template. So if you have a Neuzeit Drop and an Octatrack and you pick up my hybrid 4x4 performance template, which I released this week, this template will increase its functionality in a really positive way, I would say. It's actually broken it out and made it seem a little bit more like the dual stereo input idea or the dual drum melody bus thing. Well, a little bit. But on the Syntect, it was temporary mutes, tracks, high pass filters on every single track. And I wasn't really using any of the macros because the thing about Electron and the thing we have to talk about when it comes to MIDI controllers, this isn't a thing about the Neuzeit Drop specifically. Bring the chat up here. MIDI controllers with Electron is a kind of a pain in the butt. I'm not gonna lie. There are other things that MIDI controllers are really, really great with. Your classic MIDI like synthesizer, I mean, not MIDI keyboard, but your classic synthesizer, like pretty much any synthesizer, you could pair a MIDI controller with it, and it's just gonna give you so much more power to that device, right? On the Electron boxes, they send all of their MIDI feedback on channel 16, which means that if I have the Neuzeit Drop or any other MIDI controller for that matter, listening back for some sort of MIDI feedback, it's going to adjust everything that's set to that channel. And that can be kind of annoying if you want to see the actual feedback, if you don't want to have like the pots jump. That's not the case on the Octatrack. The Octatrack will send the MIDI back on its own specific channel. So it's actually been really great for that. So if you want, you can assign things on the Octatrack and you'll actually see the Neuzeit Drop react to what's happening on the Octatrack. But on other Electron boxes, this isn't the case. And any MIDI controller you set to it, you kind of have to switch over from using Electron to using the controller instead. And this is just something for you to keep in mind. I want to be very honest about all this stuff on this channel. So with all that being said, and all the difficulties that Electron creates, or it's mostly just groove boxes because they're multi-timbral, meaning that they have multiple MIDI channels controlling each individual track. So they have their own feedback channels and they have their own, because of the specific MIDI channels, you have to program per MIDI channel, which can be a good and bad thing, right? But because of all that, MIDI controllers can be kind of a pain in the butt with groove boxes in general. Now, I'm just preparing you for all like the difficulties that might transpire when you're starting to integrate MIDI controllers into, your Electron ecosystem. However, I have found some really great use cases for this specific controller, and I quite like it a lot. So let me explain to you what I've done with the Neuzeit Drop and my Octatrack. So that's what I've done, and the reason why I'm saying this is the MIDI controller, the Octatrack of MIDI controllers, is because of its incredible multi-function abilities, but really it's because of these macros and these scenes. This is just so much of what makes the Octatrack. The Octatrack is the idea that you can have some music play and you can create these cool performative scenes. This even sounds like something that Neuzeit Drop would do because it's doing this automated thing over 4 bars. It's almost exactly the same as what would happen on the Octatrack. Like here's a macro. I could do exactly this scene that I'm doing with the Octatrack and the fader on a fader right here. In fact, you can control the crossfader of your Octatrack from this controller. Too bad it won't actually physically move your crossfader on your Octatrack. So let me show you a little bit about what I do and how I use this controller to make my hybrid 4x4 performance template even better, and how I made my Octatrack, which I use as a performance mixer, even more powerful. This is cool. So check this out. On this fader, I have my A and B input volume. So let's take a look here. I'm gonna make it so you can see the Octatrack values. I know the camera's far away, you're not gonna be able to see this data, but if you can just see a little bit of this screen, you'll know that something's happening. When I move this down, my drums will go away, because I'm bringing the volume of the incoming audio out of my mix. So I bring this back up to 127, it brings it back up to unity. I can do that with my melody. Right? And then I can high pass this. From here, as opposed from my Octatrack, which has these more complex scenes, I can actually stick with those complex scenes and use this for these like subtleties that I actually are a little bit more annoying for me to navigate on the Octatrack. This honestly is faster for me to have some of these things set up on my drop with these nice faders And then I can hit this and bring it back very smoothly. Pretty cool, pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very impressed with this smooth transition, which you can control how smooth a transition it is with this encoder, which is also quite solid. Another thing where I'm surprised at how good the build is. So that's really cool. I love this idea for this template, because this isn't a part of the template, to be able to bring, you know, one of the inputs out like this so smoothly with a fader. I didn't have that, you know, incorporated here. So here's another really cool feature that I added. Let's go to another song. Let me make it so I can hear the music a little bit louder. Oh yeah. Okay, so check this out. So I have these 3 set up to lock in my freeze delay. This is actually something a little unique. So if you hold MIDI, and then select the up arrow, you can do a MIDI map on your Octatrack. See this little menu? This is something that doesn't get talked about very much, but you're actually able to map what each track does when it receives MIDI. So you can have it be that it controls the mutes, or it controls slices, or it controls the delay control. I have track 1 on my Octatrack in this version of the hybrid template, which isn't available, but you can turn this on very easily by going into your settings and changing the map track on your Octatrack, which isn't so important right now. But if you have a Neuzeit Drop, don't worry, I'll send an updated version of this over onto my Patreon, and you can do that if you'd like. But currently I have it set up so that these 3 are mapped to freeze delays, but it's not mapped in the same way you imagine. So on the Octatrack, check this out. When you do a freeze delay on the Octatrack, or here's a half note freeze delay on the Octatrack, you gotta hold this down. Or you have to create a scene that does it for you, like this scene does. I have this set up to be this toggle. Check this out. Delay with, or high pass with delay. I could take this like melody out here, and you can't hear this because it's frozen in a buffer that this is locked into. Just some fun stuff you can do with that. I love this. I feel like this is a really great way to transition. This template doesn't have a live looper, so there's not like a great way to transition. You can use the freeze delays like this, but this one you could just grab this and go. Let this do its thing. Go to a new pattern. Let it jump over. We're at the same BPM for both patterns. Check this out. Just transition to a new song using the Neuzeit Drop. I should have used one of these scenes. Here's one of my macro scenes I put on here. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with its functionality. Now, a little bit further of how I started breaking this out. This is an incomplete project. This takes a really long time. Programming the Octatrack, this takes a long time. This takes a long time. It's just like the Octatrack. Like I said, Octatrack and MIDI controllers, it's the same experience on both ends. You're going in, you're looking at little details, min-max values. You can also invert shapes. I've actually had it in, it actually did some MIDI stuff while this connected that actually makes the Octatrack function a little bit better, because I'm able to set like these min-max values so that when I turn in an encoder, it'll jump to a max value. So I could have it set up on here. Check this out. I'll show you. This is because this is just was so cool. I was so impressed that this is how it functions. So check this out. I know you can, maybe you can't see that because you're a little far away, but this is going from 0 to 127 with a little bit of a turn, but the rest of the turn is bringing up the send. So check how this sounds. I'm bringing my delay in, but when I bring this all the way down, perfect silence. The delay goes away, but if I want to keep the delay happening, I just don't bring it all the way to 0. But that's great, because the way I built a lot of the scenes in the Octatrack, the delay send needs to be at 0, otherwise it like gets like, you know, some weird because of the linear adjustments to delay time for some other effects, it'll cause the delay to sound weird. And so I just remove the volume of the delay as the fader's moving. I don't have that problem now because this is doing a feedback over here. So when I just adjust things on here, it actually adjusts it on my Octatrack as well. And it's kind of incredible. That's pretty fun, right? Let's bring in some other elements. I love, like, honestly, I kind of fell in love with just doing this, like just toggling that on and, you know, going over here and just switching instruments entirely. Obviously, I need to get better at it. I'm not perfect. I know some of you are. Super cool. Building scenes on here is really, really simple. It's like, you just find values that you like once you assign a controller, and then you just hit the save button and grab a slot. It's so, it's kind of silly how easy it is. And then you can remove different elements from here. If I don't want that to be a part of it, I just turn it off. And that's all there is to it. But you can go in and edit it in a very, very deep way. Honestly, like, that's kind of what I had to say about this today. I want to make some music, I think, perhaps. I want to talk about this a little bit further and maybe design a couple more scenes too, but I'm just wanted to talk about how cool I thought this controller actually was, because I kind of don't like MIDI controllers very much. And I usually am just like, there was another MIDI controller that I've used quite a bit, and I built stuff for my template, the Chic controller, and it was one of the first MIDI controllers to come out that was like affordable, a nice build, and it offered macros. And so I still think that's a great controller because it's, you know, way cheaper than this controller, and offers, you know, the macro control. It doesn't offer all the super powers that this has, you know, of course. But still a good controller. I just don't want you to know that it's still a good controller. But if you can shell out the cash for like the primo MIDI controller, this is definitely going to be the one. You know, that's kind of where we're at right now. 2025, this is the most premium MIDI controller I've ever used. And I quite like it. What I was building on over here on this side, because the way I have my Octatrack set up is it's set up to do performance effects, as you heard, as the music was playing, and this is adjusting some of the effects in my Octatrack. Probably the best use case I could find for this controller with my personal setup. These 4 tracks on my performance template that I designed are free flex tracks, and if you're not an Octa nerd, what it basically means is that these are 4 tracks for me to program, you know, sequences on my Octatrack, just like write music, you know, sample, write music, do whatever you would do in Octatrack sequencer XOX land. That's what happens over here. So what I programmed over here is that these are the faders. This is the track level. So like this is track 5's track level, but it's actually the cue level because the cue is running out the Octatrack into my Digatone and back into my Octatrack. So this is designed specifically for my performance template. These are actually temporary mutes. So instead of it being, because you have mutes in your Octatrack, so I was like, I don't want to add a functionality I already have. So instead of having it be these like, you know, these hard mutes where you hit the button and it mutes and then you hit the button again, you can just hold the button and it will mute for as long as it's held, which I think is awesome. So if you had this as your like, you know, your kick and clap or whatever, you could just drop kick and clap and bam, or you could do this and then fade down and then fade yourself back up if you wanted to have it be more instant. Of course, you could just hit the fader yourself if you wanted. And then this is all high pass filters on all 4 tracks. And that's as far as I've gotten on that so far. These are going to be low pass filters on those tracks. And maybe these will be kind of like these like band pass, whatever. And then I don't know, you know, I don't want to take away from what people would program on their Octatrack for, you know, my work, my workflow. I don't want to be intrusive into other people's workflows and make them work backwards from my position. That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, so there's a little bit of excitement in my voice because I kind of had a breakthrough as I was trying to figure out what I want to do with a MIDI controller in my setup, and this actually took me to a nice place. So I figured maybe we could build a scene on here. This is not a tutorial though on this unit. This is just me sharing what I think is really cool on a Saturday. afternoon with y'all, and I do want to build like a scene or two. And if you're able to see it and it teaches you something, like that's great. And if it just is inspiring you to maybe make some music today, that's perfect. Then my mission is accomplished, and congratulations. Enjoy your Saturday or Sunday if you're in another part of the world. But let's build a scene. It's got some cool features, and I want to point some of this stuff out too that I really liked about the drop was everything in here. It has the names of everything already. So I'm in a map mode right now, right? So I want to build a new scene. We were like kind of building macro scenes. These are macro scenes right here. This is the chorus right here. This is delay send. This is reverb send just on the whole incoming audio of both A, B, C, and D into my Octatrack. But let's add a new scene. So like, let's make a macro maybe right here that is like something useful. So something useful to me might be turning up an LFO, also using like a high pass filter, and maybe adding some reverb to it, or adding some bit reduction or sample rate reduction. This is sample rate reduction. This is bit rate reduction. Let me show you that really quick. We're in map mode, but that's fine. And I did like a max value on the bitrate reduction because it can actually add a lot of volume, and so I put it at where I thought it sounded like not too loud. You can use it at the same time. Let me see. Oh, I'm in map mode, so that won't work. Gotta be in play mode. That's just such a gimmick, and it's such a cool gimmick. I really like that. You can change how quickly this goes. I could have it go in a single bar if I wanted. I'm adding bars, whoops. 1 bar. That's nice. Doing it in 1 bar is pretty cool. There's a MIDI, you can observe all your MIDI messages here, which is fantastic for debugging. It's just a really useful machine. I've already been using it for a bunch of stuff. I was using it to make sure that my new MIDI LED cables that I designed were functioning perfectly with these new LEDs I was trying. And this was my observer for my MIDI messages, which is cool. So it actually has some like technical value for me, and a more of a engineer side of things, which, you know, I will take it. You know, it's a bonus for me for sure. So, all right, we're gonna make this scene. I'm gonna go to menu, map. I'm gonna turn this encoder. I'm gonna activate it, and I go to my next page 3. Turn on slot 1. So there's 8 slots. Think of slots as like slots are basically like what creates the macro. You have 8 slots. You can assign whatever you want to any of these 8 slots, right? So I can do anything I want on any slot. I can have it go to a different machine if I want. And this is a MIDI merger if you want to do. You can plug 4 machines into it, send it out, and merge it, and do all sorts of stuff, stop certain messages, you know, filter out whatever you need to in terms of MIDI, which is another really powerful feature. Then I did that already. That was one of the first things I did. I was like, I'm going to have this be my MIDI merger. I had Digitac going into it, Digatone going into it, Octatrack going into it, and there's just so many cables on my table, and so much going on. There's a bunch of stuff plugged in here, and I was like programming it for this machine and for this machine, and I started getting lost, and I was like, this is a bit much for me. But it can. So like what I would honestly recommend, so with the MIDI merger functionality, like I said, I really love the idea of me being completely candid with people on equipment, even equipment sent to me as a gift in hopes for a good review or whatever, however that goes. And I do have a very good positive review of this, or that's what I'd like to say. Very positive, 2 thumbs up. That's how I feel about this machine. I think it's really cool. But candidly speaking, very confusing to program like 4 groove boxes. Where I think this device really shines, is paired with your groove box for sure. Absolutely. But controlling your synthesizers, your keyboards, your micro freaks, your Prophets, your Melbourne stuff, whatever cool synthesizers you have, this is really, really going to shine there. More so than anywhere else. It shines very much on the Octatrack, which is why this demo today is with the Octatrack, because it really does totally kick ass with the Octatrack. Of all Electron boxes, the Octatrack, maybe Tonverk or I forget, I don't know how to call it, would also be a really powerful device for this to play with, because it has all these effects, and you could put them in a fashion where you don't ever change the effects. You just have them there and you use this to control the send of those effects. And that would be really powerful considering how many effects and buses that you have on the Tonewerk, right? So it's another really great device for this. Your Dig-Attack to your Digatone. Your Digatone could be good because it has the synthesizer stuff in it, but at the same time, different machines occupying different CC messages at different times. So every time you change a machine, this is going to control it in a different way. So for me, that part doesn't really work that well. And that's not a Neuzeit Drop critique. That is a Electron critique, not Neuzeit, because it is the way that these groove boxes are created. You know, it's a way it functions. Or it's not an Electron critique. It's a groove box critique, essentially. But I just want you to know that. It's like, if you really want to get the most out of this, you got to pair it with stuff that works with it. You know, that works really well with a MIDI controller. Again, Octatrack. If you are watching this channel, you might have an Octatrack. This is a great controller for the Octatrack. All right, let's go back to programming something. So I'm going to program this one. I'm going to have it be like a band pass thing, or we'll do a high pass with chorus. I think that'll sound nice, and it will be useful in a musical performance. And I do not have a scene in my Octatrack currently that has a high pass with a chorus, and I've used up all 64 of my scenes that I have possible in the Octatrack. So this would be a great thing for me to add in addition to what I currently have, right? This is where having a MIDI controller actually makes sense. It's adding, it's not getting in the way, it's not being a nuisance to me, it's not like me readjusting my workflow, it's just giving me something I didn't have before. So let's do that really quick. I'm gonna go and set this on the channel it needs to be on is going to be the channel that my filter's on, so that's track 2, and it's effects block 1. I want to control the bass, and maybe I want to control the Q, because a high-pass filter with a lot of resonance sounds really good. And then I know that we want to control the mix. So this one will be a high-pass with flanger in one part, it'll be a high-pass with chorus in another part, and then it will be a high-pass with a spatializer, I think, in another part. But either way, all of them will work fundamentally, because they're all in the same locations in my Octatrack. They occupy the same spot. This is what I was talking about, where when you use a macro control on a machine that allows you to change different synthesizer types on a per track basis, it means the CC message communicating with that instrument is also going to do something different depending on what instruments it's in. Sometimes it can change the pitch, which would suck, right? So say you think it's going to change the timbre of your synth, suddenly it's changing the pitch of your synth if it's changing the ratio or something of a FM synthesizer engine. That, you know, could, you know, happy accident for sure, but also not valuable, right? Let's do something valuable. So we're going to change this to MIDI channel 2, because that's the channel that this is on, and this is occupying track 2, which is currently set up as MIDI channel 2, and that's the default setup on the Octatrack anyway. And then I'm going to go to my next spot. I could either just hit learn. This is a great function, is to hit learn. But what's even better is that, and I know you can't see this very well, what's even better is that there's a preset in here, and I can hit the preset button. Maybe I'll zoom in just so y'all can see this process, because this is this part's definitely cool. My headphone thing's wrapped around there. Hang on. Let's check this part out. All right, you should be able to see it now. But we can't see what's going on in the Octatrack, but I can. So you're just gonna have to take my word for it. So what's really cool is when you go into menu, you go into mapping, you hit this, it lights up, it goes, which one do you want to map? I want to map this one. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna select the slot. I already made a slot, and what's in there is a device. You create a device, and I have my device as the Octatrack. And once you've done that, you can go in. I've named it Octatrack, and I have it set on MIDI channel 2 because that's where the filter was. The CC messages, this isn't the part that's correct, but I can go preset, and I actually, look at this, is all Octatrack stuff. Attack, LFO1, depth, FX parameter, but even better, filter width, filter Q, EQ filter. It has every single effect pre-named with the CC message on it in a version of it for FX1 and for FX2. Absolutely overkill to the maximum, but totally convenient for a user, but absolutely overkill. Unnecessary, but fantastic. You know what I mean? That's like, it's like extra cheese on your pizza. You're just like, do I need this cheese on my pizza? I guess I do. I've gotten used to it now. I'm an extra cheese pizza guy. That's what this is all about. This is just extra cheese. You don't need this, but it's really cool. So I know that I want it to be my high pass filter on effects 1 because that's where you're gonna put your high pass filter. You would never put it on effects 2 unless you're crazy. You know, you might be crazy, but you can set it to filter base, and then I just go okay, apply, and now this should adjust. You can't see it now. The bass on effects 2. But what I've been doing is actually just using effects parameter. This is the one that I think makes the most sense, and this is the only one they really needed to do. It's just choosing effects parameter, and then you name it what you want to name it, because often it's going to be a macro control, right? So it's going to be like filter plus drive, filter plus resonance, filter plus delay, something like that. So just using the effects parameter is probably the easiest method. So what I want it to be is effects parameter 1, apply, and now when I move this, it moves my high pass filter. I think I took this off so you can see that on my Octatrack. Moving stuff all over the place. And now this is adjusting my high pass filter. Okay, I didn't need to show you that, but now you know how this functions. The presets are really nice to have in there, but we wanted to do more than just adjust our high pass filter. We want this to do a bunch of things. So we have that set up already. We can choose a min-max value. We can double this slot over to control another slot. We don't need to do that. You can invert values, which is nice. And you can also change like the curves and if it just snaps to 0. There's some tricks on the Octatrack to do this with an LFO, which I don't do very often, but I've messed with it. But doing it on here is actually much smoother. There's so many curves. You don't even have this. You only have the one on your Octatrack. I'm going to leave it in linear because that's all we need. I just want it to be, you know, 1-to-1 with my hand movement. And let's get out of here. Now I want to go to another slot. So down here you see slots. This is how you do a macro. I go to slot 2. I turn this sucker on. I want this to be the chorus, which is going to be effects scene or track 3, effects 1, spot 6. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to change this to track 3. I'm going to go to preset, and then I'm going to go effects parameter 6 and hit enter, apply. And now let's have a listen. This should control the high pass filter and add chorus. And that's exactly what it does. Right? That was fast. I made a high pass. I made a new performance effect for my Octatrack performance template on the Neuzeit Drop in about 10 seconds. I mean, it took me longer to explain it to you, but if I'm not talking to you, I'm flying on this thing at this point. It took me maybe an hour of messing with it before I was just like, oh, this makes sense. Bam, 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 bam. And it has all these copy and paste features, you know, like the duplicate slots and stuff like that. Presets, MIDI learn works perfect. What you got to do is, you know, send MIDI out, send MIDI back, of course, so that this can communicate in a two-way fashion. But it's so easy. If you do MIDI learn and you move a parameter, you know, it starts showing you all the messages, and you just go pick this message, and it selects it, and you apply the message, and that's it. So if you have a synthesizer that doesn't have a preset like this does, this has Syntac, Digitac, Digatone, Octatrack, Analog 4, Rhythm. Every single CC message that every one of those machines is a preset inside this machine already. And to me, that is insanity. I'm just like, who did the developer sit there and program that? I mean, my God. I would have paid some kid down the street to come over and taught him how to do MIDI CCs or something to do that, because that is a lot. That's a lot of going through manuals and just programming data like that. And a lot of it, like I said, is just extra cheese on your pizza. Like, you don't even need a lot of it. It's just really convenient now that it's there, and I'm taking advantage of it. So we built a new scene. I think this scene needs some resonance. So let's add a third slot. So a slot that's resonant. So we'll go to We're on this one. Whoops, there we go. So let's go to slot 3, turn that one on, channel 2, and we want it to be the resonance. So let me show you what it's like when you use MIDI learn. So I hit learn. I know you can't see my Octatrack, but I'm turning the Q, and you'll just see that message start popping up. This is the resonance. It's CC message 36. I hit pick, push down, and now that's assigned. And I can set a min-max value, and I want to set a min-max value for my resonance. I don't want my resonance going too high because it will ruin my high-pass filter. So I'm actually going to max the high-pass filter out at about 50 because that sounds really nice on the Octatrack. Bam. And we can also tell it to do its MIDI feedback if we want on its own slot as opposed to slot 1. The thing is that with the Octatrack, you actually can have the Octatrack send its CC messages back so that when I turn a control in the Octatrack, you'll see that happen on this machine as well. So they can one-to-one, but the more macro positions you add, what will happen is that when you turn, this is actually really interesting. What will happen is when you have it set up that way and you're doing macros, say you turn your high-pass filter and you turn your high pass. You turn your high pass filter, you have it macroed to resonance, you have it macroed to delay or reverb. What you're gonna see is that when you turn it on your Octatrack, this is such a bizarre experience. When you turn your high pass filter on your Octatrack, not on the Neuzeit, but on the Octatrack itself, you'll see that your resonance will come up with it, and so will your delay. So will your delay on your Octatrack. So the Neuzeit Drop will see that it's being turned on your Octatrack and then start sending out these 2 other MIDI messages to accompany your movement on your Octatrack. That's not happening on your drop. And to me, I was like, what? And so I've been trying to take advantage of that feature where I can do stuff on the Octatrack that is actually now a macro within the Octatrack. You can set min-max values and have this adjust things in a min-max fashion, like I showed you with that delay and the volume. That's something that was using the MIDI feedback. It's just like you can get extremely creative like the Octatrack. This is why this is such a great comparison to the Octatrack. This thing is absolutely the MIDI controller, the Octatrack of MIDI controller of the Oct. I don't even know what I said. That's how I feel about that. There's a lot going on in my skull right now. I'm actually kind of distracted by all the possibilities that there is with this device. So we were just in the middle of programming. Let's go back. Back to our mapping session. Let's have a listen. So I added resonance to this. We have chorus, which can go up to a max value. We didn't do like a min-max for the chorus. We have a high pass, and I didn't do a min-max for the high pass. I usually we should probably min-max the high pass. Let's do that, actually. So let's go to slot 1 and go to the high pass, and I don't want to go all the way. Let's bring the high pass up to 100 at maximum. Okay, so, and then let's change the color of this encoder to match these other macro filter colors. So let's make it yellow. I saw some other YouTubers doing this, using one of these, and they were just keeping all the colors the same color, and I'm like, that is such... Oh, whoops. I'm supposed to be controlling this one. Another cool feature that I want to point out is it gold? Yeah, it's gold. Another great feature is that while you're programming the current page, much like, again, just like the Octatrack, on the Octatrack, when you're programming a page and you're like working on effects slot 1 and you go to a track 3, you'll stay on effects slot 1, but you'll be on track 3. So you'll be adjusting a new track's effects slot 1. This is a really great workflow thing. This works in the same way. So if I'm adjusting where I'm doing the controls or the colors of my encoders and I touch this one, now I'm controlling this one. Now I'm controlling this one on the current page that I'm programming. So if I have something in mind, I can jump around and just start populating the controls. Great workflow. I dig it. So let's take a listen to our first macro that we did together. New track. All right. That's so cool. There we go. High pass with chorus and resonance, macro control, new effect for my performance template. All right, I'm gonna zoom us back out because I think that's about as much tutorial as I'm gonna do today. I'd much rather play than teach
on a Saturday.
All right, let's try out our scene. Let's see how it sounds. So, function track. I want to be in my mute mode. Check this. This is too cool. I mean, I've already done it for too long. I've ruined it. I just really like that I can lock that in. That's pretty sick. Oh, here we go. Bring my audio back. That one scene is my favorite scene. The scene that just takes me back to square one is actually the favorite thing it does. Let's make a new scene. So this is another thing for us to track. We haven't done this live yet. So we want a scene that does this, that high passes, and maybe adds some sample rate reduction. Save. All right, let's go back here. We gotta add that to our scene, actually. We go save. This one. Add that. Okay. So now we have this scene. Sample rate reduction. Oh, wait a sec. Let's go. Save. There we go. Cool. Now I'm gonna have it do that scene. Yeah. Cool. Really fun. Another dimension of fun brought to you by Neuzeit Drop. This took a while to program, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this definitely takes a little while to program. This is something that Circo said to me when because he got one of these too. And if you're not familiar with Circo, you should check out Circo's channel. Love Circo. And he was like, it's really great. I was like, what do you think of it? I haven't really played with it yet. And he's like, I think it's fantastic. He's like, it takes a long time to program, but once you get it up and running, it's great. And I agree. Kind of like, you know, again, another comparison to the Octatrack. Once you get the Octatrack up and running, it's great. Before you get to that spot, the thing is the devil. And you're like, what do I do with you? You've cursed me. I'm very frustrated. I'm going to return you and buy you 3 different times. That's what the Octatrack does to you. I don't think that's what's going to happen with the Neuzeit Drop. I think it's honestly a lot easier to program than the Octatrack. But it does have that kind of like, what do I do with it kind of situation. And you do need to understand a bit about MIDI. You might want to, you know, learn how MIDI messages work. Getting it, sending MIDI and receiving MIDI, that's probably going to be your biggest headache. And then programming your slots and stuff, that might be a little confusing. But otherwise, overall, it's a pretty good experience. One of the best experiences programming a MIDI controller without going to the internet and using one of those HTML programmers like you have to do with like a FaderFox CC4. Not knocking the FaderFox, I love it. I have one of those too, but you know, I think it's a high-end MIDI controller, but it is, you know, you can MIDI learn with it too, but it doesn't, you know, doesn't work the same way. This is just very fluid, of course, much more expensive than a FaderFox. But really cool. So I'll do my best to answer some questions right now if people have some questions. I I have done what I've shown you with the controller. That's as far as I've taken it, and that's as far as I'm probably ever gonna take it. I know how a MIDI merger works and how to do the MIDI merging on here, but I don't need it, so I'm not gonna use it. But it's cool, and I think this is how I would use it. I'd use it as an extension to my performance rig because it makes the most sense to me. I think what I would do is it has more slots. Actually, let me show you this really quick, because it's really cool is what I meant to say, is it has 4 different in and out for the MIDI controls on the back here. And I guess the thing's so robust, like it's really nice build. And it has A and B toggles because it uses 3.5 for the DIN MIDI, and it has A and B slots because there's TRS-A and there's TRS-B. Super stupid. I don't know why we have TRS-A and TRS-B and why one company goes TRS-A versus another one going TRS-B. Everybody just go A. Just do it. Get it over with. It's stupid, annoying. But this helps you with that stupid and annoying thing that these companies are doing to be unique or something. I don't know what's going on with them. But you can toggle between whether you're using TRS-A or TRS-B. And that's really convenient and fantastic. Another MIDI controller I like that does that same function is this MIDI controller, which I love too, and it's kind of got dust on it, but this thing's really great. I use this with the M8. It does macro controls, I believe. Yeah, it does macro. And it also has a TRS-A and TRS-B toggle. Hashtag winning, right? Cool. Cool controller. I had 2 of these at one point in time. I'm down to just 1 now because I think that's the smart move. I don't need to. All right, let's see if I can answer some questions if people have any questions. But I hope that this demo was interesting for you, because this is a realistic way of using this controller. I think where this would really shine, like I said, is with your synthesizers. It does really well with the DAW. This is an amazing controller for the DAW. And so are all MIDI controllers. They're always the best with your DAW. Every time they are better on your computer. Computers are just better, I guess. Not fun, not more fun, but they're better, but they're not more fun. I don't know. Does that cancel each other out, I guess? Let me get my mouse over here. Train TV, welcome to Priority Member. What's up, Train TV? Thanks for joining. Looks like the Onyx or Hapax Squarp had a wild baby. Yeah, the Onyx isn't even out yet, right? Or Oxy. I'm sorry, you wrote Oxy. I read Onyx because I'm going blind over here. No, but Oxy is making that new controller, right? And I think that's what you're referring to. And it also does this like macro control, and it also does this fading over, I think, to one control versus another control with a linear curve, which they must have taken from this device, I imagine. Is it a possibility that they would have the same idea at the same time? I don't know, No, I'm not harping on Oxy, It's a good idea. We should probably, a lot of controllers hopefully implement that idea. But it seems suspicious. Great, now I have gas and gas. Well played, sir. You should do videos on the NerdSeek. Say it's the Octatrack of sequencers and MIDI controllers of the modular world. Lam, you gotta know that I own a NerdSeek, and it was the first modular sequencer I ever bought. And I have tons of expanders for it, and I absolutely love the NerdSeek. To this day, it is my favorite Eurorack sequencer. And it always will be, I think. I think that I'm a tracker guy. I'm just a tracker nerd. And it's beautiful. I love that thing. Drop looks cool, but definitely breaking the clean electron trifect aesthetic. Is it, though? Oh, you mean because of the beautiful colors? We don't have to do rainbows over here. We're just, we're colorful. We're alive. So we're expressing ourselves a little bit. But you don't have to. I mean, honestly, I think the colors make sense. You want to use colors so you know what you're controlling. But I understand. That might be disappointing to look at. How would chat pull this off without Octatrack? I feel like everybody who's electron oriented says it's a must. I just can't, but I love the Digitact. You can do this with that's a good question. Train, you got some good questions. You joined the priority thing and you also got good questions. This is good. Good on you. How would you do this with the Digitact? Well, here's what I would do with the Digitact. And it's what I did with the Syntact. I'm not going to because it'll be too annoying for me to do this, to switch over the MIDI control over to my Syntact, but I'll just tell you. So what I would do in the situation, say you don't have an Octatrack, throw the Octatrack in the trash. And we're just going to use this and we're going to treat it, and we're going to turn it into something else into an Octatrack. What I would do is I would assign all of these to the bass filter instead of the instead of the actual multi-mode filter, this would be bass filter. So I'd have a high pass filter on every single track. And if I wanted to extend it a little bit further, these could all be the width. So I could have a low pass filter on every single track, but also still have my creative filters. And that's just what I call multi-mode filters because you can use them to design sounds. Whereas the bass width filter is much more an EQ than anything else, unless you use audio rate from an LFO. Then it actually does design sound pretty well. And I do like doing that. So you could do that. So when you wanted to do a high pass filter performance scene that's perfectly synced to your clock, you know, you create a scene like this one here that does that, but it does it to all 16. So you can go to another page and do another whole set of effects down here. You could do that with all of the bass filters, and you could have send delay on all of the tracks a little bit, and you would build this exact scene. Oh, the Octatrack filter is so dope. Love that filter. Does that answer your question? Because that's where your head's got to go. You also can use your LFOs. Like you have 3 LFOs on a Digitact, so you could use LFO 3 and be like, LFO 3 is going to be my LFO for my Neuzeit Drop, and I'm going to assign its depth to like a min-max value on my scenes. So you could have it be like when you turn an encoder, it immediately flips your LFO to its max depth. And so it will do exactly what you want it to do with the modulation, but then you can turn up how much of the depth of the filter or how much of the depth of the reverb or the delay is happening with the actual encoder, but just jump to the modulation maximum. And then you can have that modulation be synced to the clock because that's something you can build in your LFO on your Digitact. So you can make a lot of complex scenes, you really can, and I would if I needed to, but I don't, and I don't want to, but I would. If I didn't own an Octatrack and I had one of these, that's something I would do, but I personally would rather use this to control my Octatrack because it's already set up on as a master bus. What are your thoughts about the TR-1000 with its sampling capabilities? Have a nice weekend. What's up? Definitely off topic. I'll answer you anyway. I really like the TR-1000. I think it's probably one of the best sounding drum machines I've ever used. To be honest, I really like it a lot. There is an issue that was pointed out by Dataline, of all people, who's somebody I've always looked up to as a hardware electronic musician, that there is a little there's a little gap of silence when you change kits that are assigned with when you change patterns with different kits assigned to them. It's about 100 milliseconds. And as soon as I read that, I went and tried it, and sure enough, it's there. And I hope that Roland addresses that. Besides that one particular thing, I'm very used to Electron. It has a lot of Electron capabilities or similar capabilities to Electron. You can't assign a million different parameter locks on a per step basis, but you can, do like 6 of them or so. So I do like that. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's a great machine. And if they fix the little 100 milliseconds of silence, it'll be one of the best. Currently, it needs that fixed. Otherwise, people are not going to want to play live with it professionally. Hi, Matthew. Thank you so much for your great content. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that. This would have been bonkers with the Blowfield or any other synth that has a small interface. Danny Toba, always bringing the fire. You really do often, like Danny Toba, I'm glad you come here and you hang out in the chat because you do bring some good stuff to the chat. You often have good feedback, and that's good feedback because that's true. So this is the kind of controller with the fantastic MIDI learn that shows you the MIDI CC in case you won't even know what a MIDI CC is. Like you trying to find out what it is, you have this, you know, this screen that'll let you know what the MIDI CC is, and that's really nice for just learning your MIDI CCs. But it also, like a MIDI controller in general, this is the power of a MIDI controller, is meant really to help you and, you know, not to switch your workflow over entirely. The Blowfield sucks to control. It's one of the, honestly, one of the worst synthesizers to try and program. It's almost like in DX7 territory where you're just like, oh my God, you know, change this, and you only got the 4 encoders. It's annoying. Having a MIDI controller set up with all of those CCs that you want it to be for the synthesizer, fantastic, would completely change your experience on that synth because the synth sounds awesome. It's a beautiful synth that's going to be awesome for many more years to come. Owizilo. TR1000, the drop, Toneverk, whatever, Live 3, the Bento updates. I'm not sure about the Bento. Yeah, there's a lot. This has been a really crazy end of the year, hasn't it? I wonder if there's any more to come. Haven't heard of anything, so I don't know, but I would be excited if they did. If there was more stuff, because I want to see some more before Christmas. I found an MPC looper workaround for live jams. That's interesting. I'm hoping to get myself an MPC Live 3 up on the table because I want to try it out because I added that Electron style sequencer and I want to see if it's you know, if it's good. I've never been an MPC person, but I am a finger drummer. I love to finger drum. I even took a finger drumming class once. Saturday night party with EZBOT doesn't get any better. What's up? Thank you. Appreciate that. It's like a really big function reload. Yes, exactly. You're talking about this. Yeah, I love that. That's so satisfying. That is real satisfying. I was thinking about the LCXL3, but this is Launch Control XL Mark III. I'm glad I figured that out. But this seems pretty awesome. Launch Control Mark III and this are not in the same category. They're not even close to each other. Launch Control Mark III is a consumer MIDI controller. That's the best way I could put it. Launch Control Mark III is a really nice controller. Beautiful, lets you do a lot of stuff. This is this is like an instrument, I would say. This gets closer to instrument territory than it does MIDI controller territory, whereas something more like the Launch Control Mark III is just a good MIDI controller with updated 2025 USB-C, that kind of stuff. Good controller. I love Novation. I really do. I actually really like Novation stuff a lot. I even like working with them when I get the chance. But this is not in the same category. I just want the faders to do the lights. So like the fader, I mean, that would be cool. The thing that the faders do is they let you know, or they can, it's not currently doing that. Maybe it needs to be playing. Well, maybe I don't have it set up, but technically the faders can, these lights, or maybe it is doing it. Maybe it's the color that I chose. These lights will tell you, that's why there's up and down arrows, like where to get back to your value that it's supposed to be at, or its original value. The fader will pop and be like, you need to go up if you want to get back to where it is. Or I guess maybe it's supposed to be for the MIDI feedback. Let me see, this is input AB. See what happens. Oh yeah, check it out, watch this. So if I change this below this, this knows it's supposed to be at 100%. See how that went away? Oh, you can't see that. God damn it. Check this out. If I adjust plus 63 here, See that changing? Lighting up? There you go. This is telling me that this value in here is below the value it's supposed to be here. And so this just reset this back to where it was supposed to be. So it's like I screw something up on my Octatrack. That will bring it back to where it's supposed to be. Very cool. Another cool thing. I keep discovering things that I really like about this controller. It might stick around. A little bit on the larger side for me, but it would be really good in a live setting just to have it be your little breakout box for your effects. And you can get really creative with it too. Like you can save presets and all sorts of stuff to make things a little bit easier. Like I said, it's kind of an instrument unto itself. Drop plus push 3 has my mind. Well, I'll lend you this, Jordan. Femto is a very good push 3 user. I'll let you borrow this so you can do that. Make a thing for it, a preset. Dorman Foreman, what's up? Welcome. Does this have any VSTs or it has presets, but I don't know if it has VST as presets. It does have presets for D8Ws. I don't know about VSTs though. I would imagine somebody's going to make a serum preset for it because that would be a smart move on anybody's part. They probably could sell that on Gumroad or something, or coffee for like $1, and end up making some money. You know, enough to buy a couple cups of coffee. Isn't there something dropping by Arturia, also drum machine, or was I dreaming? I don't know. I honestly, and I really don't know. I used to know. When I worked at the synth shop, I used to know everything that was coming out like months and months ahead of time, but it's just not the world I'm in anymore. Now I wait, just like everyone else. Live 3 is crazy. Yeah. I would love to hear the designer talk about how he came up with the idea of this. He's got some YouTube videos. I know he doesn't go into, the philosophy of his designs, but he does have some YouTube videos. We can't see. I know. I'm so bad at that. I'm sorry. J1 Moti. I'm happy everybody came and hung out with me on this Saturday afternoon. Always a good pick-me-up to jump in with my favorite folks, my favorite hardware geeks like me, and just checking out new gear that could be really fun. This track is muddy. This is the track I was doing the demo for the hybrid template before. Just like the Octatrack. I could actually build this scene again if I wanted on the Neuzeit Drop, which is crazy. I was thinking to myself, I was like, does this make the Octatrack like less relevant? But it doesn't, because you still would need to be able to have all these scenes. I mean, all of these tracks with their send effects and in linear and in unity gain and all of that, and the LFOs and the modulation and the tracks. And so no, it doesn't. But it is crazy to me that this can function in an identical fashion, even though, and not identical, in fact, a more flexible fashion. This is actually more flexible than the crossfader itself on the Octatrack, technically. Which is impressive, because I've been toting, you know, spouting, if you will, for years that it's an unbeatable workflow on the Octatrack, and I do think that's true, but it is cool to see something trying to come up and rival a little bit of at least a part of its functionality, right? That's nice. We got the scenes on another device, and we have a different version of our crossfader. That's what this can offer you. I think that's pretty sick. Yeah, you got it, Femto. I don't get it. Why Tonverk did not get a second stereo input? That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe their next device that they make in that platform will have multiple inputs. Maybe it won't have any. Maybe it'll just be a synth. Who knows? Hopefully it'll be an Octatrack too. God, that would really make my life great. I would sure love to have, I just don't want them to change it. You know, if they make a new Octatrack, please don't change how it works. Just keep it the same. Just make it better. Keep it the same and make it better for me. Please. It doesn't make sense unless they cookin'. Yeah, drop plus Tonverk, straight up. That's right. Did you hear that? Don't you dare, GG. Don't you dare. Don't be spouting that. Of course, if I knew something like that, I would never even allude to it here. I would never say that. But I don't. And I don't think they are. I don't know when that's ever going to happen. If it ever will. I didn't even know about the Tonverk until a couple months before it came out. So, yeah. And that's like the one company that I'm like really in cahoots with. I will tell you this though. I have my Tonverk on the table right now. And it's working pretty good. It's working pretty good. I'm thinking it's gonna be working pretty good for everybody soon. And I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. I'm still, you know, not everything that's in the box is available to you yet. There's stuff printed on the panel that isn't even in the unit yet. Strange, for sure. I know. I'll be the first one to say that. But it's 100% going to be there. And there's going to be an undo redo. That's never been in an Electron box. There's no undo redo. There's always been a save and recall. That's been around for years now. Not forever, but it's been around for years. But an undo redo, that's never been around. So the idea that we're going to have an undo redo in Tonverk is pretty mind-blowing to me. I love that idea because I always forget. I wonder how many redos and undos it can go forward and backwards. Like, what will the buffer be for that? The Paulian stuff has had undo redo for years as well, and it goes back like 16 or I don't know how many it goes back, but it's like at least 10. Goes back 10 different changes that it will go back, which is crazy to me and great. Paulian doesn't get enough credit for some of the stuff they do, I think. They've also done some weird stuff, like the Play Plus. I haven't used that in a long time. It's an expensive thing too, and it really is very cool, but it's just like, it does that one very specific thing, and it sounds really good, and it's cool, but it's also strange. I missed the last hour. Can you give a quick recap on what this MIDI controller deal is? Sure. That's actually not a bad idea. We've been vibing for a little over an hour, and I'm not going to do the usual 2 hours because we already did that this week. So let me do this little recap about what this MIDI controller does. Okay, GG, pay attention. This is a macro MIDI controller. That's its superpower, is that it has macros, but it also has this little knob up here, which lets you go from this kind of interpolated like smoothing between macro positions, okay? So if I set this all the way to the right and I have it set in jump mode instead of drop mode will just drop you directly into a scene. Jump mode can smoothly, linearly, like beat jump you, not beat jump. Beat jump is another functionality that requires song position, which at Electron we're not using, so we're not using song position. So beat jump's not happening here. Beat jump would be really cool. This is very good for the DAW. But basically, you can have a scene, GG. Right, this is a macro scene. It's like an Octatrack effect scene. So this is a high pass filter with reverb, okay, and resonance. So there's 3 CC messages on this knob, and I can have a scene set that will smoothly, listening to the clock, bring this fader back to position 1. It'll go like this on its own to the clock based on however many beats or bars that I've chosen. So let's set it to like 4 bars so we can get this nice long smooth fade. That's just like me doing exactly this on the Octatrack. Right? Except for I don't have to do that part where I slide it back, it just does it. This is its main superpower, but it does a lot. It's like, you know, it's a full-fledged MIDI merger and router too. It does everything. There's not anything it doesn't do when it comes to MIDI, I think. It's just basically got all your MIDI bases covered. Let's try another one. So these, you can also make scenes that are, you know, essentially doing that function. If you set it to drop mode, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It'll just take you straight to that value. Now I'm back out of that value. So it's counting 4 bars at the moment, so every 4 bars is a segment that it would change. See, it just snapped over all those fader values. That's its superpower. That's like what it does that other controllers don't really do. Besides it doing literally everything, that's what it does that no other controller does that's available right now. Yeah, pretty cool. I like it a lot. But I'm like, the thing that I've played with the most so far is that I've added functionality to my Octatrack that doesn't exist on my Octatrack, like a latching delay. Let's go to another song. Yeah, this has got a nice... I forgot these two sample rate reduction and bit rate reduction actually happened before the freeze delay, so I'd have to do this. Then freeze it. Pretty dope. Gotta say, I think it's pretty cool. So what we did on the live stream today is I showed off this implementation that I did for the hybrid 4x4 performance template for the Octatrack, but really just how I'm using it with my Octatrack. You do whatever you want with it. If you happen to be a hybrid 4x4 user, if you're using the Octatrack the way I do as a performance mixer and you've got this template on your Octatrack, this project that I'm currently building, when I'm done with it, and maybe even before I'm done with it, maybe just when I get tired of doing it, I will upload onto my Patreon. And I will share it with you so that if you're using this and you happen to own the drop, you can also implement these ideas into your workflow as a little gift from myself. We also built a macro ourselves and went through that process, which was pretty cool. And, we just talked about all the stuff you could do with the unit. It does everything. It does, we didn't talk about all the stuff because it just does too much. It does more than I'm going to use it for. But the stuff that it does do that is not something that gets in the way of my workflow is a really nice addition to what I do with my live hardware gear. So I definitely like the unit. I give it a, high praise. I'd say it's a 5 out of 5 when it comes to MIDI controllers. It's the most premium MIDI controller I've ever touched, and pretty grateful to have it on my desk right now. So thank you, Neuzeit Drop, for sending it over a while back and being so patient with me to learning it and sharing it. That was very kind as well. But yeah, I like it a lot, and if you can shell out the cash for a nice MIDI controller, I think that this is the one you should pick up if you want to have Octatrack style features in your live hardware. Check out the Neuzeit Drop. Pretty sick. All right, folks, that's going to be it for me. I wanted to show this off and what I've been doing with this drop with my Octatrack, and I think I've done that. And not trying to convince anybody to do one thing or the other. And I really wanted to point out the pros and cons, and we did. We talked about how, using any MIDI controller with an Electron box comes with its own, slew of caveats that you have to deal with. There's pluses and minuses for all of it. Electron does a great job of not needing a MIDI controller because of the way it's designed. It always has those, 8 to 6 or 7, however many knobs that it has on the screen, assigned to the values on the screen. On the Octatrack, you have 6, and then your level encoder. On the Electron boxes, you have 8, and then a level encoder. So there's a lot of controls on Electron boxes already. What this can do is provide you with some functionality that you didn't have, like instead of a mute mode where it's just muting when you hit the button, maybe it's a momentary mute. That's different. You don't have that on your Electron box, which you can create, a solo by making a macro for devices that don't have solo. That's something you can do with this device. You can create an effects scene that modulates over time because that's what you did on your Neuzeit Drop on a Digitact. You can't do that without the Neuzeit Drop. That's something unique to the Neuzeit Drop. You can do it with your computer with automation, but you have to be connected to a computer. So there's a lot of really cool functionality that this machine offers that you can't find anywhere else on any other MIDI controller currently available today. I think that's great. I love showing off cool, unique, and interesting music technology on this channel in hardware form specifically, sometimes software like Orca, but usually hardware. And this device presented me with something really cool to share with you guys today. So thank you for checking it out. I'm going to let everybody go and enjoy their Saturday afternoons. Hopefully you feel inspired to check out MIDI controllers with your Electron boxes. I really want to use this with my M8 tracker, but the M8 tracker isn't quite ready to play with this device yet. You can do some stuff, but it would all snap all the values. Still a cool idea, but there are certain devices, like I'm saying, that you're going to want to pair something like this with, your synthesizer being number 1, and then, or your DAW, then your synthesizers, then your groove boxes. I think this is going to be the best route to do this with. If you own an Octatrack, grab a Neuzeit Drop. It's a great idea. Everybody have a great Saturday, and I will see you on Tuesday for another live stream.